Good morning, everyone. Day 17. Here we go. Last day discussing STER. So one more time, STER is an acronym that describes the experience, the phenomena that arise once you've entered flow. And so flow, we're going to get into this a little bit more in the sessions to come. Flow is a neurological shift, right? The way your brain starts processing the information coming from the environment through the body starts to move through different circuits. And so as you are fully absorbed in the moment, as you enter sort of a deep mindfulness, we can say, the literal neurology, the mechanism of the living brain is altered. And in that altering, certain sections are turned on, certain sections are turned off, certain sections are heightened, certain sections are diminished. In that physical change, we experience psychologically and interpersonally, we experience a shift in our sort of psychological reality, a sense of selflessness, where so often where we are preoccupied with ourselves, a sense of timelessness, where so often we are preoccupied with time and schedule, a sense of effortlessness, when so often we are burdened by the struggle of grind and hustle, and and we experience a richness, right, where so often we experience a dissatisfaction or a longing for what is to come instead of what is current and what is arising. And so STER is a way of understanding the consequences. And the reason it's helpful to really apply this to memory is because these experiences, as obvious as they can be, even when they do arise, can sometimes be overlooked for more practical or familiar thoughts or experiences. They're sort of subtle. And so that's that. What I also wanted to discuss is another condition for flow before we get into our practice today. And so some of the conditions we already talked about were that to enter flow, right, you have to be playing some sort of game or doing something, whether you're painting, playing basketball, writing a musical score, cooking a meal, having a conversation. There has to be sort of a game. And that game has to have rules. And that game has to have clearly defined goals. And so the word game is interesting, but we can use the example of just a conversation and apply this concept of rules and goals to see that even a conversation is a sort of game, and in that, the very common experience of finding flow in a great conversation. And so the rules of a great conversation are you have to pay attention to the person, eye contact, you speak, you listen, rules of etiquette, right? You smile, you have a certain distance according to the person you're with. There are all these social norms that go into just talking and engaging each other. And so those would be the set of rules. And then the clearly defined goal is you want to have a good conversation. You want to extract knowledge or perceive the person in front of you, and at the same time be perceived and be acknowledged and be heard. The goal in a great conversation is a sort of union or convergence of two minds or three minds or four minds, whatever it is. And so even in this example, where I don't think most people would associate a conversation as a game with clearly defined rules and goals, you can see that blueprint does map over a nice dialogue. And when both people are participating with the rules and working towards that goal, the conversation is more than likely amazing. And so clearly defined rules and a clearly defined goal is the first necessity to enter flow. What are those rules and goal for mindfulness? Resort to the definition. To be with the present moment, on purpose, non-judgmentally. Rules and goal. Another condition to enter flow is you need feedback, and this is the value of knowing STER. If you are not in selflessness, not in timelessness, not in effortlessness, not in richness, then something's going on within you that is preventing a deeper experience of the now. And that's just really important to know. Another condition that we talked about was that you must enjoy the act of what it is you're doing intrinsically. And so if we go back to the example of a dialogue or a conversation, if let's use the example of a, sort of, you're buying a new car, you're with the sales rep. That conversation has different rules, and there is no intrinsic joy in the discussion of how much the car is, how much you want it to cost, how much they want it to cost, all the sort of sort of hidden fees, whatever it might be. Because of that, because there is no intrinsic joy in that conversation, an innate attraction to the experience, it's a little harder to enter flow. We're still contained within a mind that is driven by expectations, driven by power, driven by results. So this condition to enter flow of intrinsic joy is really important. And I've shared this, you've heard this. Thich Nhat Hanh's instruction of finding joy or igniting joy with every breath is essentially that. It is a cue to enjoy and commit to the process. The process is beautiful. And in the fragments of that process, which are dispersed across time, what you'll find is the heavenly sweetness of now, the deep now. Okay, so the last condition is pressure. And so if we use the example of athletes, we can see clearly how pressure how pressure facilitates this full absorption. It's the make or break moment, essentially, where no longer is there any alternative but to, let's say, win the game. That there is no alternative but to be selfless. There is no alternative but to be timeless. There is no alternative but to practice effortlessly, no alternative but to practice with the richness or to feel the intrinsic joy of the experience itself. The example I have in my mind, it comes from Fight Club, right? Tyler Durden, Brad Pitt takes some guy out of a convenience store, holds a gun to his head, something like this, scares the hell out of him, asks for his ID and tells him, if you don't, what's your dream? He wants to be a veterinarian or something. I have your address, I have your information. If you aren't on your way to becoming a veterinarian and getting out of your shitty job, then I'm gonna come and I'm gonna kill you. And then Edward Norton is sort of shocked by the violence and the display and the insanity of that whole situation. But then Tyler Durden explains, I just sort of put the fear of death into this person because that's what that person needed to ignite change in their lives. So, a Hollywood example, but a potent example of what is meant by this condition of flow. That you have to, that you don't have to, but the pressure to achieve forces some, right? A make or break forces some into deep, deep, deep absorption. And so how we can facilitate that pressure when in meditation is by increasing the intensity of your practice. And because meditation is a fairly simple process, the only thing that we can sort of escalate is time. More time creates more pressure. And it'll break some, but it'll make some. In that extended time, some of you will find a more enlivened experience of STER and mindfulness just because of time. And others will feel more intensely the absence of flow, which in itself is a teacher. So we'll both learn, whoever we are in this particular sit and tomorrow's sit, we'll both learn something. But I just want you to feel or understand that the time variable and the absence of my guidance is there to put pressure on you to figure it out on your own. Okay, cool. Let's get into this. Comfortable seated position. Slow down your breath. clearly defined rules, clearly defined goals. The rules and goal: be with the present moment, on purpose, non-judgmentally. Kabat-Zinn has added a little detail as if your life depended on it. And so the mindfulness practitioners are cueing concepts, whether they know it or not, that facilitate absorption. Meditate, be here, be now, non-judgmentally, as if your life depended on it. And so we're going to add pressure to make or break us. Either way, we learn something. And that pressure is time and silence. You'll hear my voice at the very end. Let's all take a deep breath in and a slow breath out. And off we go. Take a deep breath in. Ignite joy. Slow down the exhale. With an inhale, open your eyes. Good work. Day 17 done. Lesson again. Pressure. Pressure makes or breaks us, even in meditation. If you want to add pressure to your practice, meditate on your own. Meditate for longer periods of time. And one of my personal favorites, meditate in public. Meditate in a space where no one else is meditating. Feel the contrasts of these states of mind, the contrasts of presence and non-presence. That pressure really helps you understand that you're doing something special when you're sitting down with the present moment, non-judgmentally, as if your life depended on it.